The armed forces of the Russian Federation, commonly known as the Russian Armed Forces, are the military forces of the Russian Federation. They are divided into the ground forces, navy, and aerospace forces. There are also two independent arms of service: strategic rocket forces and the airborne troops. Under the federal law of Russia, the Russian Armed Forces, along with the Federal Security Service border troops, the National Guard, the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Federal Protective Service, the Foreign Intelligence Service, the Main Directorate of the General Staff, and the Ministry of Emergency Situations Civil Defense, form Russia's military services, and are under the direct control of the Security Council of Russia. The armed forces of the Russian Federation are one of the largest military forces in the world. As of 2021, Russian armed forces strength counted over 1 million active duty personnel. The precise number, claimed by presidential decree, is 1,013,628 active duty military personnel and 889,130 civilian personnel, the fourth largest in the world. Additionally, there are around 2 MILLIO and citation-needed voluntary reservists. The total number of citizens who can be used for mobilization deployment on an involuntary basis in the case of wartime mobilization amounts to 20 million. It is mandatory for all male citizens aged 18-27 to be drafted for a year of service in the armed forces. The Russian armed forces are the world's second most powerful military, owning the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world. The military budget of the Russian Federation was $61.7 billion in 2020-21, the fourth highest in the world. It possesses the second largest fleet of ballistic missile submarines, and is one of the only 3 nations operating strategic bombers, with the world's most numerous tank force, the second most numerous air force, and the third most numerous naval fleet. Armed forces under the Ministry of Defense are divided into the 3 branches of armed forces: the ground forces, aerospace forces, and Navy 2 separate troop branches. The strategic rocket forces and airborne forces, the special forces of armed forces. The Special Operations Forces logistical support, which has a separate status of its own. There are additionally 2 further separate troop branches, the National Guard and the Borders Service. These retain the legal status of armed forces, while falling outside of the jurisdiction of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation. The National Guard is formed on the basis of the former internal troops of Russia. The new structure has been detached from the Ministry of Internal Affairs into a separate agency, directly subordinated to the President of Russia. The Border Service is a paramilitary organization of the Federal Security Service, the country's main internal intelligence agency. Both organizations have significant wartime tasks in addition to their main peacetime activities, and operate their own land, air, and maritime units. The number of personnel is specified by the decree of the President of Russia. On 1 January 2008, a number of 2,019,629 units, including military of 1,134,800 units, was set. In 2010, the International Institute for Strategic Studies estimated that the Russian armed forces numbered about 1,027,000 active troops, and in the region of 2,035,000 reserves. As opposed to personnel specified by decree, actual personnel numbers on the payroll were reported by the Audit Chamber of Russia as 766,000 in October 2013. As of December 2016, the armed forces are at 93% of the required manpower, up from 82% reported in December 2013. According to the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, between 2005 to 2009 and 2010-2014, Russian exports of major weapons increased by 37%. Russia spent $66.4 billion on arms in 2015, then $69.2 billion in 2016, having taken third place, after the US and China. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, the share of modern weapons in the armed forces reached from 26 to 48% among different kinds of troops in December 2014. This was raised to 70.7% as of July 2015. The average was more than 71% over 2021. The Soviet Union officially dissolved on 25 December 1991. For the next year, various attempts to keep its unity and to transform it into the military of the Commonwealth of Independent States failed. Over time, some units stationed in the newly independent republics swore loyalty to their new national governments, while a series of treaties between the newly independent states divided up the military's assets. Apart from assuming control of the bulk of the former Soviet internal troops and the KGB border troops, seemingly the only independent defense moves the new Russian government made before March 1992 involved announcing the establishment of a National Guard. Until 1995, it was planned to form at least 11 brigades numbering 3,000 to 5,000 each, with a total of no more than 100,000. National Guard military units were to be deployed in 10 regions, including in Moscow, and a number of other important cities and regions. By the end of September 1991 in Moscow, the National Guard was about 15,000 strong, mostly consisting of former Soviet Armed Forces servicemen. By August or December 1993, CIS military structures had become CIS military cooperation structures, with all real influence lost. In the next few years, Russian forces withdrew from Central and Eastern Europe, as well as from some newly independent post-Soviet republics. While in most places the withdrawal took place without any problems, the Russian armed forces remained in some disputed areas, such as the Sevastopol naval base in the Crimea, as well as in Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and in Transnistria. The armed forces have several bases in foreign countries, especially on the territory of the former Soviet republics. A new military doctrine, promulgated in November 1993, implicitly acknowledged the contraction of the old Soviet military into a regional military power without global ambitions. In keeping with its emphasis on the threat of regional conflicts, the doctrine called for a smaller, lighter, and more mobile Russian military, with a higher degree of professionalism, and with greater rapid deployment capability. Such change proved extremely difficult to achieve. Under Pavel Grachev, defense minister from 1992 to 1996, little military reform took place, though there was a plan to create more deployable mobile forces. Later Defense Minister Rodionov, in office 1996-1997, had good qualifications, but did not manage to institute lasting change. Only under Defense Minister Igor Sergeyev, in office 1997-2001, did a certain amount of limited reform begin, though attention focused upon the strategic rocket forces. The military doctrine of Russia sees NATO expansion as one of the threats for the Russian Federation, and reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in response to conventional aggression that can endanger the existence of the state. In keeping with this, the country's nuclear forces received adequate funding throughout the late 1990s. The number of intercontinental ballistic missiles and warheads on active duty has declined over the years, in part in keeping with arms limitation agreements with the US, and in part due to insufficient spending on maintenance, but this is balanced by the deployment of new missiles as proof against missile defenses. Russia has developed the new RT-2PM2 Topol-M missiles that are stated to be able to penetrate any missile defense, including the planned US National Missile Defense. The missile can change course in both air and space to avoid countermeasures. It is designed to be launched from land-based mobile TAL units. Russian nuclear forces are confident that they can carry out a successful retaliation strike if attacked. Because of international awareness of the danger that Russian nuclear technology might fall into the hands of terrorists or rogue officers, it was feared might want to use nuclear weapons to threaten or attack other countries. The federal government of the United States and many other countries provided considerable financial assistance to the Russian nuclear forces in the early 1990s. Many friendly countries gave huge amounts of money in lieu of Russian arms purchase deals, which kept Russian agencies functioning. This money went in part to finance decommissioning of warheads under international agreements, such as the Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, but also to improve security and personnel training in Russian nuclear facilities.
Оп. первому.